Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to take part in this important virtual innovation camp about sustainable tourism. My name is Inger-Lise Brones, and I work with sustainability issues and projects in the Visit Tromsø regions, and I've done this since 2018. I will present for you the first part of our presentation, Tromsø and sustainability before COVID-19. Helle, the Director of Tourism in Visit Tromsø region, will present for you the last part of this presentation, Tromsø and sustainability after COVID-19. First, a few words about Visit Tromsø region. We were established in 2009. We are one of the largest destination companies in Norway and the largest in northern Norway. Today we are 10 employees, 30 when COVID hit us. We are 200 member companies. Tromsø municipality owns 34% of the shares in Visit Tromsø, and the rest of the shares are owned by private tourism companies. We run the official tourist information for the Tromsø region, and our income is mainly generated from the travel industry, commission through activities, sales, and membership. So, Tromsø before COVID-19. Well, it was 10 years of glory and growth. And here you can see 4 big numbers. 98% growth in guest nights, 445,000 guest nights in 2008, and up to 885,000 guest nights in 2019. 81% increase in hotel guests, 80,000 guests in 2008, and 500,000 guests in 2019. 207,000 visitors from Airbnb in more than 1,000 units in Tromsø in 2019. 2.6 billion NOK in value creation, in local value creation. The travel industry has now grown to be the second largest value creator in the region with 4,300 employees. Only retail employs more people. 2.6 billion is also about 12% of the total value creation in Tromsø in 2018. The sustainability focus before COVID-19. In 2017-2018, winter tourism began to take off completely here in Tromsø, and the local population started to react negatively. There were tourists on the stairs in front of your house. There were tourists fertilizing in your garden, taking pictures through your windows, even tourists taking pictures of school children and kindergarten children. Cars and minibuses were parked in the middle of the road. There were dangerous traffic situations. And the tourist shops took over Storgata, the main street in Tromsø. Media was flooded with negative reports. This was not a desired situation. The short version of what happens further on is this. Visit Tromsø contacts the municipality. We must start the work of becoming a sustainable destination, and we must develop strategies for tourism development. This is urgent, and we have to get started now. And we did. In June 2019, Tromsø municipality adopted its first ever tourism strategy. Just think about it, the first ever. It says a bit about the status the travel industry has had. Unfortunately, this is not unique to Tromsø, but quite representative of most municipalities in Norway, even for Oslo. So what does sustainable tourism mean for us? As a part of the National Sustainability Tourism Project led by Innovation Norway, we work after these 10 principles of sustainable tourism. Sustainability in tourism means caring for the needs of people living today without ruining future generations' opportunities to meet their needs. To take part in the National Sustainability Project has been very important for us. We had to start with getting facts on the table. In connection with the certification process, we did the following data collections in 2018. We had an economic report on ripple effect and value creation analysis. We did a tourism company survey. We did a guest survey, and we did a resident survey. Before these reports, we knew very little about the actual local effects from the tourism industry. We had a certain thought. Now we got the numbers on the table. Now we can measure our development. This is an example of the important findings from the resident survey in Tromsø. Over 80% of local residents are positive to the travel industry. 86% think that the travel industry is important. 84% have spoken to tourists without prompting. 80% have had a positive experience to tourism in the area. 38% have had a negative experience to tourism, and 35%, and this is important, 35% are worried that tourism will reduce their quality of life in the future. The next survey we will do will be next year, and it will be very interesting to see how and if the results will change after the COVID-19 situation. The other important experience from the sustainable branding work is the increased awareness rising from the company level up to the municipality level. More companies are making more conscious, responsible choices in everyday life, reduce their footprint, become environmentally certified, establish a good and safe working environment for their employees, shop from local suppliers, increased awareness of local value creation, local identity, history, culture, and traditions as a part of their product offering. Visit Tromsø profiles green travel on the website. We have increased focus and involvement of the local populations. And one concrete example of that is that before we published Hillesøytoppen on Sommerøya as an attractive tour proposal on our website, we asked the local inhabitants at Sommerøy if this was okay for them. And luckily they said, yes, it is. But previously, we would not think of doing this. Visit Tromsø and Tromsø municipality has also cooperated and are now cooperating very well. Visit Tromsø has in many ways become an advisor in travel issues for the municipality. We have built a bridge between the travel companies and the municipality administration. The administration can contact Visit Tromsø and through us get in contact with 200 companies. It's an obvious goal for Tromsø that the inhabitants should be satisfied with the development of tourism. in addition to the guests being satisfied with the visit. But to be a good guest, you must know what is expected of you when you visit. We have therefore developed rules and guidelines for this. One of the guidelines have we called Tromsø Cares. We communicate these guidelines widely, both in brochures, on Visit Tromsø website, and in social media. Here, we encourage our guests to take many considerations into account during their stay in Tromsø. Then they help to preserve nature in the north at the same time as they act in such a way that the locals will welcome them. As mentioned, Tromsø was the first city in Norway to be a sustainable destination. It's a commitment to work continuously with sustainability, a commitment to work to get more companies environmentally certified. As a destination, we have to certify every third year, and we need to continue the work. This picture is from the official ceremony in January 2020. And we didn't have much time before the COVID hit us.
Yeah. So, do you remember what you did on the 12th of March in 2020? I do. First, I was personally thrown into quarantine after a work trip abroad, and then we started working on closing down everything. We at Visit Tromsø sent people home from work into temporary redundancy. We closed the tourist information, we cancelled all activities, and we stopped all marketing activities. We also started communicating really close with the municipality on how to deal with the current situation. The COVID-19 has been devastating for the travel industry, but it has given us the opportunity to build up from bottom again. Changing a full destination into becoming a sustainable one is difficult, and building up an empty one again from scratch should be manageable. Just to give you an image of the situation, this picture is taken in the middle of Tromsø city center on the 13th of March 2020 on the shutdown day. Normally, the streets would be bustling with people, guests, locals in the middle of March, being here to watch the Northern Lights. If we compare February 2020 with February 2021, we had 28,000 guests going through the doors at the tourist information in 2020. This year, we had a total of 500 coming through our doors. Last year, we sold activities for 9 million NOK only in February. This year, we sold for 100,000. And if you look at the staff, we had 30 people working for us last year, including the seasonal workers. But this year, we have a total of 10. In the beginning, we thought it was going to be closed down. The thing is, we had known for a long time that we needed to change in the way we're working to become more sustainable. But people don't really want to change when the money is rolling in. It's difficult to change a winning formula, no matter how short term it is. When you think my bottom line is massive, you don't really want to or need to change. But the COVID-19 situation has forced people into looking at the building blocks of tourism in Tromsø to get them into place first and then build, rather than trying to force new foundations in after the building was finished. So going forward, there will be more focus on a three-way bottom line, economically, socially, and environmentally. We had a lot of aha moments during the COVID, but maybe the most important ones are that cooperation is the key going forward, and that locals are extremely important because you do want them on your side. You do want them to support you and want you to be around also when times get rough. So in the autumn of 2020, we started a new strategy process for our company because we needed to look at our business model. As Inger-Lise said, most of our income came from the travel industry, and that's a really weak situation to be in when something like the COVID situation happened. So we needed to change. And three important factors we took into the strategy work was the pandemic, of course, but also the green shift and digitalization. We also made sure that our strategy was closely linked towards the Tromsø municipality's tourism strategy because they need to align and harmonize. But it also needs to be lined up with the national strategy that actually was launched last week. The strategy work showed a shift in how destination companies work, from traditional marketing and sales activities mainly to more destination management tasks. Destination companies are more and more involved in the development of destinations through good destination leadership. The destination company must take responsibility for the destination as a whole and not just for individual players' interests. And the destination company have signals from suppliers and other actors in the industry. This means that we need to work in a different way. During this work, we also gave ourselves a couple of new values. We used to have credible, engaged, and bold, but we also added knowledge-oriented and sustainability. So going from marketing to management, we need to work on different things. In order to succeed, we need to make sure that we have a well-functioning destination management that paves the way for quality delivery and value creation. We need to cooperate between locals and regional actors getting together. We need to have competence and good communication to spread relevant marketing insights and development competence in the destination. We need to make sure that we do still have great hosting to the visitors. And we need to show and market the destination in prioritized markets. So being a community builder, it's important that we work on a local level and become a part of the destination management. We also need to work on the regional level. So we have established a fora for all the 14 destination companies in Northern Norway, where we work closely together on sustainability issues and how to develop tourism in a sustainable way. And we also work closely with the Northern Norway Tourist Board. But also being one of the big 5 cities in Norway, we also have to work closely with the other big cities like Oslo, Bergen, Stavanger, and Trondheim. And of course, we do work with Visit Norway and other organizations. So where are we heading? That's not easy to know. But one thing is sure, sustainability is going to be fundamental in everything we do going forward. It is the locomotive for development of the future of travel in our destination. And we have to be able to look back 10 years ahead from now and be proud of what we actually have created. And if you look back at where we were heading before the COVID-19 situation, we might have been part of creating some sort of monster. So now what we have to do is just to jump in and do our best.
Thank you.
So in this picture, you can see our cottage villa Juhani during last winter, taken from the lake. So we offer high-end accommodation coupled with activities, and we have our private wilderness chef, so you can get the whole package from us. We have 9 cottages located 45 minutes from Helsinki, surrounded by the Nuuksio National Park. And we are a family company. In this picture, you can see my grandparents, Eino and Toini, and they had to move from Karelia because of the World War II, and they bought the land that our company is now in the 40s, and they started farming there. And in the 60s, beginning of the 60s, our grandfather and mother decided that farming with small amounts of land isn't maybe the best business. So they started creating and building rental cottages. And from there, our company story started. My dad hand carved and built 3 cottages, and now me and my 2 sisters have built 4 deadwood villas. And this is a picture of the lake that our cottage resort is next to. And I have wrote there that we love the nature. We have lived in this area for almost 75 years, and we have rented cottages and run hospitality business for almost 60 years. This is the playground that we used when we were kids. We didn't go to the playground, we went to the forests, and we went to the lakes to swim in there. And when our generation took over a bit more than a decade ago, we had a decision to make. What sort of company do we want to build this into? And we decided that we want to focus on quality, not quantity. We want to keep the surrounding forests and the forest lake as calm as it used to be when we were kids. So that was a decision towards sustainability. We didn't know that this is sustainable travel at the time. We just thought that we want to keep this as serene as it was, and we want to provide the same experience that we had when we were kids and enjoying the cottage life by the lake. Before we go into our business more, I want to tell a bit more about my personal CO2 emissions and sort of awakening towards sustainability. So in 2015, this is roughly my CO2 emissions for 1 year. That's almost 15% above Finnish average. I think in Sweden 10,000 kilos is the average at the moment, and in Norway you are doing a bit better, around 8,000, I guess. We enjoy the jolly life of flying around, enjoying vacations and eating meat, drinking wine, and having fun. But the years following, me and my wife started discussing sustainability and the climate change, and we read some books and started thinking that maybe we should do some changes. And then I think around 2017 we started doing some changes. We switched to CO2-free electricity and to CO2-free heating. 2019 we decided that we'll stop flying. That was sort of the last thing, and this is where we are at the moment. We still love to travel and travel a lot, and we enjoy our lives. And this is sort of our family switched from meat to plant-based diet purely on climate reasons. We love meat, we still do, but we don't eat it because it's not a sustainable way. So this is just by reconfiguring your life. We feel that we haven't given up on anything yet. And the tools are there if there's will to do it. So that's my main message on this whole presentation, that you can do tourism business sustainably if you want to. We don't need to wait for some innovations or big changes or EU to do something or someone else. We can make the change happen right now, today. And about the business, the same change came to all of the owners of the company. So we decided that in 2018, we rewrote our strategy, and we wrote there that we will be using Hawk Hill Cottage Resort as a tool to fight climate injustice and environmental injustice. So we will use it as a tool. And since then, we have set a goal to be a forerunner in sustainable travel, not just to make our profits better, but to challenge our partners, to challenge our competition to switch to the good side, sort of, and to show that you can combine sustainability and business and flourish. And I think if you want to be a successful entrepreneur in any industry, you need to take sustainability into the heart of your business strategy and core values. So this is good business practice also. What we did in practice. First, we crafted a plan, a really ambitious plan on what sort of changes we want to do. We want to be CO2 neutral. First, I said 2025, and then I thought, well, maybe we can do better, and we said that we will be CO2 neutral by 2020. That we achieved. Now our goal was to be CO2 negative 2025. I think we will achieve that by the end of this year or during next year. We were the first to get the Green Key certificate in the area from hospitality companies. We were the first ones to get the Sustainable Travel Finland certificate when it was launched in 2020. We switched from renewable to nuclear energy. It was sort of a statement because we need to use every tool to figure out the way to fight climate change, and neglecting nuclear as one of the solutions is just plain wrong. As I stated, we calculated our CO2 emissions, and we noticed that a huge part of our emissions is from us driving cars and doing logistics. So we set out a plan to invest in electric cars and electric charging points for our guests, and now we're full electric on our company side. So we were able to negate those emissions. We built from wood for it to be a carbon sink, and we build as high quality as we can. Our idea is to make as long as possible lifespan for the buildings, so they last at least 100 years. Our goal is 200 or 300 years, so they would be as ecological as possible. We had an issue with recycling at our cottage wing. It's surrounded by the national park. We didn't have any recycling, so we basically had recycling bins and we took the garbage ourselves and recycled them. But it wasn't that efficient to run a business like that. So we were able to negotiate with the company that takes care of the recycling in the area. So if we bring our business and we are able to get 3 more households, which was really easy, then they will extend their recycling route and all the services to the village of Tervalampi. So we got recycling for the whole village as a result. We switched and have been using geothermal heating, heat pumps, electric heat pumps. Our heating is AI controlled. We have taken out the heating thermostats from the customers, and we have set the temperatures in all of our rooms and all of our villas to 21 degrees, and we can control them easily. We have solar panels on 2 of our roofs, and the idea is that we do everything we can towards more sustainable business. Now I have talked a lot about sustainability in an environmental view. We sort of are by nature sustainable in the economical way, because we are a family company and our goal is to keep the area and the environment intact and safe and prosper in a long run, not to get quick wins and exit. Last year we started to plan restoring of our privately owned peatlands, and in a cooperation with the Finnish Metsähallitus, the government institute, we set out a plan to restore the peatlands to ensure biodiversity and also to use peatland as CO2 capture, and by doing that we will achieve CO2 negativity on our whole business, because the peatlands are pretty wide on our lands. We also found that during the COVID pandemic, we founded a food donation program in the municipality of Vihti and invited other companies to participate and donate money so we can provide food help for the needy. And we also have participated in the village of Tervalampi by renovating their old school kitchen, so we can use that for our business, but also the village people living there can enjoy that. So we could do a lot more, but we try to do part by part as much as we can. What are the benefits? So we have done a lot. What have we gotten out of it? Is the bang for the buck good? It's hard to calculate exactly, but our sales have gone up during basically 15% a year. Last year we grew over 32%. Our emissions were still lowered, so we have cut the chain between growth and emissions. We're doing really well despite the COVID. I can't say we wouldn't. We are hurt in a way, but because we are sustainable and we take responsibility from our action, the travelers close and even further have found us and kept us afloat really well. We have gotten visibility from sustainability that wouldn't been able to be bought by money. So we have visits from media. We have all the UK. We have the agricultural minister of China has visited our cottage resort to see how we are doing, what we're doing. So we get a lot of attention by doing the right thing and being transparent with it. First, our competition thought that we're a bit mad on why we invest so much in it, and you're talking weird things. You're investing 200,000 euros in electric cars, and you're not getting anything in response. You're just doing it for the nature. Well, it's the right thing to do. So first of all, it makes you feel good to do the right thing. But now, after a few years, a lot of our competition has followed. So we are creating change from our point of view. We have heard a lot from our customers that they are selecting us over the competition because of what we do and how we do it, because of our green initiatives and how transparently we tell about our environmental sustainability program and our sustainability program. One thing that's the next thing that people are talking that we're mad. So we stopped marketing to other continents. So we are not marketing to China and the States. And the reason is purely climate, because most of the emissions in tourism come from flights. And if we get people to fly to Finland, it doesn't matter what we do on our site, because the emissions are there. So we're focusing more and more to the closed markets, and we're thinking about switching our active marketing to purely focus on Finland. And that might sound a bit crazy, but that's the responsible thing to do. Flights aren't good. So, action towards sustainable tourism. What can you all do? What can we do? Well, first off, what we are doing here is learn more, get more information. The changes aren't huge. It's just a matter of reconfiguring your life, reconfiguring your business. You don't have to give up something necessarily. And I think you should make an ambitious plan, as Tromsø had done. They are doing a lot of right things. Make a plan and make an ambitious plan, not something this is easily done by 2050 for us, something that's difficult to do, and try to follow that. And as I stated, reconfigure your life and business for a better future, the future and the future of our kids. That's what we are aiming for, not some profit today or tomorrow. And we feel that it's a really big competitive advantage for your business if you really do it sustainably, really do it ambitiously. So my suggestion to all of you, be a forerunner, be honest about your sustainability programs and your actions, and be ambitious, because the world really needs heroes in the fight for a better future. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess you see the right screen, so I just jump into this. Great to be here and great to listen to you all. I mean, I think this was a very inspiring talk, Matti, so thank you very much for that. I will have a more academic perspective, as you probably understand, considering my position at the university, and I will talk a little bit from a more kind of not this kind of practical perspective, but rather try to kind of embed kind of sustainability in kind of a wider context. And I think if we look back on why tourism in the North has grown, I usually say it's because of something that I have chosen to call arctification. In a way, the fact that the image of the destination has changed quite dramatically. Historically, I think if you go back, I mean, it was a destination for just a few people. Not very many came to the north of Sweden, for instance, or the north in general, in order to spend their holidays. And now what we see is that we turned into a destination with a great international appeal. And of course, I mean, there are several kind of reasons for that. Globalization is one of that. And also, I think another is this kind of global interest in Arctic matters. And that is not necessarily only related to tourism, but really indicates that tourism is embedded in a lot of other processes. And here we have issues like geopolitics, a race for natural resources, and so on and so on. So a different kind of aspects of the North that in a way bring the North into the media, into the global media. And where also climate change and the debate of climate change, I think, has been in a way kind of ironically been a great promoter of tourism in the North. Simply because we're talking about the Arctic. I think more and more people would also like to experience the Arctic or the European Arctic. And I think this has brought along a couple of changes in the tourism supplies that we see in the North. There was a redefinition of winter tourism with rather new and exclusive products. And for the Swedish case, I usually argue that the invention or the establishment of the ice hotel actually was one of the greatest innovations of northern Swedish tourism in general at all, simply through showing that winter can actually be something that is attractive and where can spend time in winter and do a lot of fun activities. And by that, it has turned into something that a colleague of mine in Tromsø, Arvid Viken, once upon called a global playground for visitors from all over the world that come to the North in order to experience winter and other supplies. This is a picture that I recently took at the Tree Hotel outside Boden, and it shows where the tourists come from, and it's simply a way of illustrating this kind of globalness, this kind of global reach of the tourist products that we have in the North. Even though that we have a European focus, there is obviously people coming from all over the place. Yes, but who are then those new Arctic tourists? Yes, I think they're global in many cases, and they're sometimes well off, meaning that they just tick off another destination because they have seen very many others already. So they're experienced, and they're looking not necessarily for the real stuff. They're looking for soft adventure, meaning that kind of combining in a way the harshness of or the imagined harshness of the North with a kind of a more comfortable and luxurious kind of service infrastructure. In many cases, they're unprepared. And you can wonder why this picture, I mean, it's showing the Ice Hotel 365, the all year round version of the Ice Hotel in Jukkasjärvi, why this structure came about. And I think one of the reasons is that we got a lot of tourists to the North who thought that they would go to the Arctic. And an Arctic in a public imaginary is often white and icy and snowy. And so they came during summer times and wanted to see the Ice Hotel. And obviously it was not there, it was in a Torne River. And so this is to a certain extent an adaptation to those stereotypic imaginations of the North and the Arctic that many tourists hold. And in that, there are also ingredients of wilderness and indigenous people, but I won't go into that now. And we see a lot of these kind of more exclusive kind of products developing. We have the Tree Hotel, Arctic Retreat, another place. Dog sledge tours have become a very common part of the Nordic tourist supply. We have lodges, but we have also this kind of more kind of low-cost travel. For instance, in Pajala, where we have chartered trips from the UK, more or less mimicking the tourism that is also going to Rovaniemi and kind of has a Christmas flavor to it. Some colleagues and I, we looked at this kind of idea of the Arctification and look on that by looking at firm names. And we use kind of a number of words that we kind of or related to Arctic, and looked how the names of the tourism companies have changed. And you see in this diagram that obviously there are more and more companies around that use the term Arctic in their company names, and you see that also on the map. And actually, they don't use the Swedish word Arktis, they use the English word Arctic, also clearly indicating that they are aiming at an international market rather than at a domestic market. Why do they do that? And why is this kind of embraced, or has this been embraced by a lot of stakeholders? I think partly because, of course, to the employment opportunities that it brings, and also to the indirect and induced economic impacts that are kind of thought of when it comes to tourism, meaning that the tourist companies employ people, and those people then will require services locally and so on, and that will kind of contribute to a community development and also an improved service provision, kind of enabling often rural and remote places to survive and to keep up a certain service level. So that is, I think, very often this kind of public policy perspective on why tourism in the North is wanted and also promoted. But at the end of the day, when we looked at the map, we saw that a lot of those places are actually nowadays, with these Arctic names, are close to airports. So there is obviously a focus on accessibility. And what we know is that usually, coming to the North requires time, it requires money, and it requires also certain volumes for companies to be able to get around. And you see in this figure that the number of trips, actually, usually, if we think of a kind of an imagined center, the number of trips decline the longer we come from that center. But and so actually developing tourism in a periphery is not really a smart idea, because not a lot of people will come there if there are not any particular reasons given to visit that area. And it is argued that the relative naturalness of the area, the wilderness characteristics, you could say, are this kind of counterbalancing argument that makes people travel for a long distance. But that means also, since it's far away, not a lot of people will go there usually. And that means that you have to charge high prices in order to make enough money to be able to sustain your business. And this charging high prices, on the other hand, means that you are also more or less inclined towards targeting a global market, because locally there are not so many people willing or wanting to pay high rates. So we have this kind of development where tourism is close to the airports, and it's close to urban places. If we look further then a little bit to climate change, what we see is, of course, that there's a shortening and an instability of the winter season. One of the major selling arguments today for tourism in the North, we're talking sometimes about last chance tourism. Those maps show the likelihood of snow days, and the darker, the less likely snow days are. And yes, we all know that, of course, that snow days are a problem, and in Rovaniemi they have already problems with kind of sometimes very snow or with Decembers without a lot of snow. We have also seen an increase of long-haul tourism, and this is, of course, as Matti already pointed out, in itself a contributor to climate change. And yeah, I think it becomes more and more pertinent to think of how we can deal with that. And I mean, there's arguments that we should look for more regionalization of tourism as a solution to that. And this is also something that we see in the Swedish media. This is an article that was sent in by a couple of tourism researchers from Gothenburg to DN, the major Swedish newspaper, saying that do not promote Sweden to tourists who need to fly long haul. Swedish taxpayers' money is used for luring tourists from countries far away. I think they have certainly a point to it, but it's also kind of a moralization of tourism that we see. Tourism is seen just as a symbolic consumption, because tourism is export. And of course, they could have argued we shouldn't really promote Volvo cars to people in the world either, because they have to travel long haul in order to reach their markets, and they will spread a lot of emissions. So in a way, they don't argue that. They argue against tourism, and this is something that we sometimes call the moralization of tourism. Tourism travel has certainly its impacts, but stopping tourism alone will not hinder climate change. So we have to do more, actually. Nowadays, of course, our colleagues here from Tromsø said that there was a shock and crisis to tourism, and that led to a temporary deglobalization because of the pandemic that we experience today. You see on the map the change in guest nights. The darker, the greater the losses. of guest nights between 2019 and 2020. But the thing that we can wonder is that, is this the new normal? Because if we talk about a deglobalization of tourism, maybe all those tourists won't come, and we will see that kind of result. So for targeting or for being able to handle that from a municipal point of view, I think there is a need for a market mix comprising various geographical and other segments. So local tourists or regional tourists, but also international. But it also requires kind of communities and municipalities who put not all eggs into one basket and put every effort into tourism development only, but rather have diversified industrial structures where tourism is one of the sources of income and employment, but not the only one. And the question is, of course, also should we then focus on community or company? Because I think, as Matti has shown, I mean, for a company, they can do perfectly well in being totally sustainable and finding a way ahead. But can communities do that in the same way? I don't know. It's a more complicated question. Last slide. I think a very important thing is don't forget the regional and domestic markets. The map to the left shows the dominating international market segment in 2019. And you can see that Sweden is distributed between Norway and Germany as the most kind of prominent international markets, even in the north, with an exception of Pajala municipality, where one entrepreneur actually targets particularly Belgium. But this is one of the pictures that we often see. We are interested in the international tourism. But don't forget, if we look at the most common group of tourists, the most common segment for all municipalities in Sweden, besides, with the exception of 4, is actually Sweden itself. So actually, the domestic market is the most important market, and I think there is a lot of potential to developing that more strategically. So there will a recovery take place without any doubt. We know that people are interested in traveling, and they will do so. And they will do so simply because they will have the money to do so. But of course, how this will unfold is still uncertain. We have uncertain times ahead. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, my name is Inger-Lise. I'm from the Natural Resources Institute Finland, doing research a lot about nature-based tourism, among other things. And I think we had really great speeches this morning, and very, very interesting, with raising many kinds of questions, as we have seen already in the chat. And maybe also if Matti can put his camera on, that would be good. Okay, great. And yes, I think you have answered some questions already in the chat, but what I would like to ask, and actually Dieter was already touching that, but you had a question, I think Inger-Lise and Lone had a question about this, if COVID is a real game changer. And how do you see that? Is there, Dieter was saying that the recovery will take place, and that's what I think tourism industry is waiting for, and thinking that we go to business as usual. But is that so? Will there be some real changes, as the climate change haven't really affected in that sense that it's real changes? So you want to start?
Yes, I can start. Thank you very much. Good question, of course, and nobody knows the answer, so it's much easier to talk about that. I mean, when we see a previous pandemic events elsewhere in the world, and maybe not as global in the outreach, what we have seen is that after such a kind of event, 1.5 years after, 2 years after, figures are back to the level that they have been before. As I said, I mean, this pandemic was greater than all the others have been for quite a long time, and so we don't know whether that will happen as well there. But I think it will happen, and I think it will happen because people don't have become less wealthy. And at the end of the day, I mean, our consumption is simply kind of dependent on how much money we have. And people will consume, and if they don't consume here, they consume elsewhere, and I think that is one of the challenges, of course. So from that point of view, I wouldn't actually expect the pandemic to be the game changer. I would rather expect climate change to be the game changer in the long run. I found it very, very impressive what Matti has presented from his company, I have to say, because that's so consistent and consequent. That's really, really amazing. But I think, I mean, others won't be able to do that. And I think even Matti has, of course, to a certain extent, no control about his customers and what they do. And I mean, that's a part of the business. So, but I think there, I mean, if governments would put in measures to ban flying or to make it much more expensive, of course, I mean, that would be a greater game changer. But there were simulations done on that, and it actually shows that the North, actually, in a European context, for instance, will grow because our competing destinations are maybe New Zealand, North America, Canada, South America. So from that point of view, there will be a kind of a climate gain, you could argue, by this regionalization. But I wouldn't expect, so to say, the tourism in the North to stop, but rather to be more or less in the same volume, maybe even grow.
Okay, thank you. I actually kind of agree with you, but I think about this, that people have money. I think also traveling by train costs a lot. But what about Matti? You want to?
Yeah, I'm hoping sort of the pandemic, I think, isn't the game changer. I agree with Dieter on that, but it might accelerate the change towards more sustainable consumption habits. I think it's a sneak peek to the future, sort of. The flights, hopefully the prices go up. I'm not believing in the flights stopping and people changing their habits at once. But for example, we have a lot of guests that haven't visited us ever because their holidays always start with a trip to the airport. And then they start planning. So they haven't seen Finland even as a destination that attracts them. But I hope that this has sort of shown that in Finland you have a lot of great destinations and places to visit. So it might have changed their consumption habits a bit. So and about flying, we can't control who is our customer. But for example, we don't necessarily have to try to attract people from Germany to Finland because most of them fly. Rather, seeking to actively reach people from, for example, St. Petersburg or the great Stockholm area. There's plenty of customers who could arrive with lower emissions. So in that regard, the companies have the responsibility. And also the destinations and organizations like Visit Norway, Finland and Sweden, where they put their money. If they try to reach everyone from China, well, that's not sustainable. So sort of a shift in how you see and where you put your money, we can accelerate the change and reach, as Dieter said, the Nordics might be winners in this sort of climate game where the travelers will go. So I see a bright future, but we need to get there faster.
Yeah, there is actually a question, what would happen if all tax money that now goes into marketing instead goes into developing sustainable tourism? I think that relates very well to what Matti said about this, that marketing not to China, but to closer areas. What about Inger-Lise and Lone? How do you see this after COVID life, tourism life?
Yeah. Well, as we see, the COVID was not a game changer, but we totally agree with you that it has accelerated our traveling habits. People have been more aware the value of local businesses. They think global and they act local. And also the businesses has got more focus on how to sell to the locals, because this has not been an issue before. Because the issue has been that it has been a lot of foreign customers to Norway. They have had enough serving the foreign markets, but now it's a kind of a game changer, because the focus now is more local and national, and it's a win-win, because we want to map the locals into the tourism kind of, so that they understand that most of the tourist businesses are how should we say it? They don't want to destroy the nature or take do bad things for the locals. They want to do best, and we have not been good enough to tell these stories.
But when I say game changer, I don't mean necessarily for the guests traveling, but it's been a game changer for us as a company and for us as a destination. The way we work with the municipality, the way we look at the strategy that the municipality made, saying that we aim at an increase of 8% per year, is now something we're looking at. Do we actually want 8% increase every year? The way we look at the locals as a market as well, like Inger-Lise said, and that it's important that the locals are actually happy with what's going on so that we can continue. So for us as a company and for the destination, COVID has definitely been a game changer. We also see it in the cooperation between all the DMOs. We have created 14 destination companies in the north, working together, sharing, looking at how we can work more sustainable instead of looking at each other as competitors, as we've done before. It's another sharing culture in how we want to work in order to make it more sustainable. So for us, I would definitely say it's been a game changer. But if guests come back into the figures we had in 2019, as I'm sure, but the increase after, how large will it be and how large do we want it to be? Is it about having guests here longer and have fewer, be more strategic in how we market and who the right guest is? I think that's the way we're going. So, and hopefully we can actually make it happen too, because everyone is seeing that things are not as predictable as we thought it was, especially February 2020, and now it's completely different situation.
Yeah, thank you. There are some questions in the chat about how can tourist companies cooperate to make attractive packages to travel slow and sustainable and experience great things along the way. And another one related to this, I would say, about how local tourist companies could cooperate with more sustainable logistic companies so that people from, for example, Europe wouldn't need to fly and could travel to the north more eco-friendly. So I think Matti might have.
Yes, we sort of, when we stopped flying, our family, we run into a problem that we still love to travel and, for example, visit southern parts of France. And how can we do that? Well, we bought an electric car and thought that, okay, we'll travel with that. But then you have to figure out the logistics. Do you use a boat? Do you use a train, a car? But when you figured it out, the distance isn't that far, and you get to experience a wine country in Germany or France, and you can go to Paris on the way, and you get to go to French Riviera and stay a week there, and then you can get back through the Alps, and you sort of get to combine multiple vacations into one. Okay, you can't travel for 1 week, you have to travel maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. But we were we were going to do that last summer, but for obvious reasons we didn't. But we're sort of eager to go because the vacation was going to be, in our experience, one of the best. We would experience so much. So I think there is a product or multiple products, and there are already ready solutions, but we just need to figure out how the customer can configure and find out. It's sort of a totally different round trip. It's no more like the travel switches from teleporting from airport to another and then staying in the destination, rather seeing the whole way. So it sort of just requires innovation. It needs technological platform. It needs railway companies to agree on stuff and make trains as easy as flying. And I think it's, again, reconfiguring stuff and maybe innovating on the way.
Yeah, I agree. And we have a project on cycling tourism to develop that in the north, this tour cycling. And that's also something that you related to this slow traveling. I think that's it looks quite promising because people are really interested nowadays in that kind of traveling. So you see much more. Any comments to these products and these more sustainable kind of cooperation, ways to cooperate? Dieter, or?
Yeah, I could comment on that. I mean, I agree with you, Matti. I think you're totally right. I mean, but it requires really this kind of not only tourism solutions. I mean, we're not talking about tourism then, in a way. We're talking about entire consumption and how we consume things and so on. Because I think today, I mean, I mean, what I sometimes see, I mean, there are a few companies around, at least in the north of Sweden, which is my major frame of reference, that can choose their tourists. And I think a lot of them have kind of ideas about being sustainable, maybe not as radical as you do, but they have ideas and they would like to engage and so on. But at the end of the day, it's also about getting around to making a yield that enables them to sustain their families and their businesses, and that is kind of this trade-off that has to be made all the time. And I sometimes think, I mean, even though I really highly appreciate all efforts made in order to become more climate friendly, I also think it's sometimes, I mean, we maybe expect too much from the single stakeholder, from a single operator. And where often, I mean, a question is about tourism systems, about regulations, about laws that would kind of twist consumption into a certain direction. And actually, I'm not really optimistic about the policy in this kind of context. What I see is that industry is far more kind of protagonist and far more modern in ways of that the government is not daring to be, in a way. So I mean, I think personally, I think that I will fly with electric airplanes in the future, and that future is some 15 years ahead. Maybe not to Spain, but from Stockholm to Umeå. And so that, I think, because of consumers change their behavior, not because of government regulates that. And I think that is really kind of one of the challenges that we have, in a way, that we see the tourism industry. And what I kind of wanted to say is this kind of, we moralize about the tourism industry very much, and that tourism should do this and that and so on. And I can agree with that. But on the other hand, I really would ask other stakeholders, the political stakeholders, other industries to actually contribute. And I think, I mean, just kind of a comment also to Inger-Lise and her colleague from Tromsø. I think you are right in terms of that we have seen kind of a game changing for destination companies. I mean, if I talk to your colleagues here in Umeå, they would say, for instance, that now people have realized what tourism means to communities. And that also meant that they kind of now have a different assignment, in a way, which is not only marketing, but rather place development and things like that. So, and they are very much aware of this kind of new way of orienting their strategies. So I think there has been a change.
Thank you. Inger-Lise and Loni.
Yeah, well, what we see now after COVID is that we have 2 projects going on that are funded by the county and by Innovation Norway, and one of them is sustainable travel routes in the region that goes from Tromsø to Målselv, Senja, and all the way up to Alta, looking at niche products and other things where we can kind of display them in a better way for people to find, saying war history, for instance. How do you travel in order to kind of experience these things that are already there and that might need a tuning, but you don't necessarily know about them, and then presenting them in a better way so that we can keep the guests and also give them a better experience. And the hope is to use transport and things that are already there and kind of utilize it in a better way. The other project we have is product development after COVID, where we have our member companies coming in, working together on products where they cooperate. And an example there is all the still standing attractions going together on creating a product for families, where they try to send the families in between so that they experience more and more together. So I think that the way of working would change a bit. And yeah, what you said, Dieter, about the destination companies and the change from marketing to management is really, really clear. And we've seen it over years that the kind of the expectations towards us have been different, because the locals call us at the destination company when something happens. If there's a person in the garden looking into the trolley with a child in it or something, they call us and say, come and pick up your guest. And we're like, well, we can't really do that. But that means that the locals view us as a different thing than just a sales and marketing organization, which is what a destination companies used to be. So we really have to work in different ways. But it's really interesting times we go into, because you don't really know where we're going to end up. But I feel that it's a good thing that we have to think through what we're actually doing in a different way and how we're affecting the locals. And like I kind of said in the end of in our presentation, is that we don't want to create a monster that we're not proud of. I want to be able to live here 10 years from now and still feel like it is my destination. It's not just a tourist destination. So the locals and how they feel about the products and how they embrace them and the industry is really important, because if they're not happy, then nobody's really happy. So.
Great. And Matti?
I just wanted to add that I agree with Dieter about the government and political change. That I think it used to be that the governments regulated how you should approach environmental stuff, but now it's the other way around. Companies are running way ahead and doing real changes and actions, and politics and the governments aren't just doing enough. They could make big changes, and if the changes would affect the whole EU, for example, then the competition level, the plane would be level to everyone. So it's not just that we are doing something and giving up these guests and everyone else is doing the business as usual. So I'm not hopeful regarding the government and the politics to make the change. I am hopeful that the individuals and the companies and maybe groups of companies and the global companies could do the change, and hopefully they will.
Did we lose Matti's voice?
Hopefully.
Okay.
I'm all done ranting about. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was thinking of the discussion that there were earlier in the chat about certificates. We will have a webinar on certificates in tourism in 9th of June, which you can put your calendars already. But about Matti, especially for Matti, how do you I'm not sure if you said, how do you communicate your all you are doing for environment? I mean, you market it. Do you have some certificate, or how do you see this issue of certificates?
We have a Green Key certificate and Sustainable Travel Finland certificate. We sort of don't promote environmental or sustainable stuff, because it's part of our business. So when we market ourselves, we market that also. It's just one part of our business. I've been looking at workshops on how to promote and market your sustainability initiatives, and it's sort of the wrong way. Just do the right thing, and then tell about your business, and then you are doing it, in my opinion, right. I think certificates are good in that way that for us it gave more structure. It gave a wide perspective on what all the things that we should account for. And we had some blind spots, obviously, that we then were able to figure out. But now I think they aren't ambitious enough. They're sort of the basic level that all companies should have. And after that, you will start doing the changes that will change the world. So you know, in some companies view it that when we get this certificate, then we are ready, and then we don't have to do anything more. But I think that's sort of the ground level, and then you start building. And you should have those sort of steps in the certificates also, because in one questionnaire, for example, we had the option of do we have electric cars or do we have some sort of micro cell-free wipes, and we got 1 point on both of them. The other one costs €1 and the other one is 200,000 or 300,000 euros and will lower our emissions so drastically. So and they were valued the same. So in a way, also the certification systems need to step up their game and sort of have different levels or different levels and ambitious. But also, of course, you have to start from somewhere, and you need to get help. But I just have to say that we started these actions in 2018, and it's only 3 years ago. And we have learned a lot, and we have been able to change our business drastically. So quick changes are possible. Of course, in some areas they aren't that, like we are currently in a position that in a way we can select our customers. Not every customer, but we're in a good position, and we realize that that's not possible for everyone. But it also comes partly from doing the right thing, that we are in a position that we can do these things.
Does everyone else want to say something about the certificates?
I could say something about it. I mean, no, I haven't followed it for a while, but I mean, some 5-10 years ago, I mean, when I talk to people having, for instance, acquired the Swedish Nature's Best label, I mean, they would have very much agreed with you in that sense that it was very much, I mean, going through the process was very much a question of structuring the business and becoming a better business. And I think many of those I talked to were very positive about that, but they were more doubtful in relation to the promotional value of such certificate, because I mean it requires in a way that the certificate makes sense to a customer, and I think to achieve such a level of knowledge is not easy, and at the end of the day, I mean, you kind of end up maybe having, you know, you're proud of your certificate and you get a lot of people to your business and you think they're coming for the certificate, but they behave like, you know, pigs or whatever, in that sense that they don't respect all the ideas because they have chosen it because of other reasons. And so this kind of, I think there are pitfalls to it. And at least if you expect too much from a certification, and I think my experiences from talking to people would really align with what you are saying, that it's a good way of reaching some kind of awareness, some kind of structure in the business, as you said, some kind of minimum level. But the customers come for that reason. But it certainly improves the business.
Yeah, there is also a question that do you think that all these great ideas, they come from people who have this kind of interest and enthusiasm for sustainability, or how to get more normal companies to follow and put the time into changing their companies? And I think this relates very much to the certificates in a way that might be the system, but I don't know, Dieter.
I think this is a question that I have started to think about quite a lot. And I mean, if we look at research, for instance, I think one of the issues that we seldom address in terms of northern tourism or Arctic tourism or tourism in general is the question of ownership and who owns the business. And I think people who have a local attachment, who have a commitment to the local arena, to the community, to the environment, they can do that. They have these preconditions that I think Matti is kind of exemplifying or illustrating so splendidly. But I think if we get a situation where we got a lot of external capital in that invests and that would like to see return on investments, then I think, I mean, it also, of course, will affect how these kind of issues will be taken care of. And so in a way, I think if tourism grows and tourism is kind of owned by stakeholders outside the local arena, the likelihood of becoming less environmentally friendly is increasing. So I think this kind of local ownership is kind of a good precondition. It's not a guarantee, I should add, but it's a good precondition for actually moving towards a situation where we can become more green, more zero green. And I think it's also in line with the Tromsø story. Some of you said, I would like to live here in 10 years from now as well. And I think if you would like to do that, of course, you kind of relate to the local arena. But if you're sitting somewhere in Oslo or in London or elsewhere and have just an investment in the north, I mean, then of course your ability to compromise with environmental values is much greater, and that is not a positive thing.
I just had to comment to this, that in Finnish Lapland, I think we have quite good situation in that sense that we have big companies and they have the stories like Matti had, that they are second generation, and actually the biggest one, there is this guy who said that he never didn't want to go his father's business, but he did. It was very similar to Matti's story, but I don't know about the sustainability. But anyway, the ownership is very much in the north, and they are kind of know the nature and environment and appreciate that in that sense. So Matti had hand up first.
Yeah, this I had sort of I was thinking how to scale our solutions and share it to others. And a year ago, when COVID had started, we founded a new company to create a tool for hospitality businesses and accommodation businesses to run their business, from booking engine to ERP. And one core value and idea was to bring sustainability into that system. So it's in your hospitality business's core system. It has CO2 calculations in it for your business, and it has sort of a roadmap how to be sustainable. I'm currently negotiating that if we could get the certification systems connected to an API. So the idea is to make sustainable choices easy. So you don't have to use years to figure out what's the right thing to do. If the tool that you run your business on would tell you what are the right choices and what could be the next things you do, I'm hoping that we could, again, make change faster. So making it easy is one thing, and there are technological and software solutions that, because now it's pretty hard to figure out what's the right thing to do next. So
yeah, that's very much true. Inger-Lise and Lonnie.
Totally agree that the local ownership is good, and we also think that maybe they have better intentions taking care of the environment locally, but we are in lack of a big and difficult license, and that is the license to use the nature. As in Norway, as in also in Sweden and in Finland, there is this right to roam, and the right to roam doesn't difference between businesses and inhabitants, and this is our main challenge for how to take care of the nature. And there are no regulations today. You can go wherever you want to have both summer and winter in the green area and the blue area. You can bring customers, and no one really knows that you are doing this, because it's voluntary if you want to be a member of organizations in the travel industry, like be a member for our destination company or in other organizations. And this is a real challenge for us. How can we take more control over the business? Because the companies want this. They don't want that it should be free entrance in the Norwegian nature. It's a free seating today, and we cannot live with it. We have some solutions for it, but this is a really main challenge, and we are here in Tromsø feeling extremely at this issue, because they come here to Tromsø by plane and then they go out in the nature, and we don't really know where they are going. At the other places in Norway with a lot of tourist traffic, they go to certain places like Preikestolen or some tourist attraction, and then you know that, okay, they are going to these attractions. Maybe they are less, they are not so prepared with the clothes and everything, but at least they have a bit of control compared to us, where they go everywhere where they find mountains and nature attractive.
Yeah, but it's also like Peter said, the local companies do want some sort of control over it, but the large international investment companies that only buy products and the small companies that we have in this region that we see now, they don't necessarily care about the landscape and the footprint they leave behind. But this is not something we can do on our own, so we kind of need the municipality and the county and also the government basically to say that we want the tourism industry to be some sort of regulated industry, because you wouldn't have fishery everywhere. It is some sort of a system you have to kind of register into. The same if you want to go looking for oil, you can't just do that. You kind of have to be, but tourism industry is it's free to do whatever you want. You can rent the car as long as you have a license. You can go wherever. And Tromsø has a very special kind of type of guest, because most of them come in winter to do see the Northern Lights, and that moves around. So you don't go to a special place. You look at the forecast, and then you might drive all the way up to Finland, or you go to Lyngen, or you go to Kvaløya, or you stay in the city center, depending where the best forecast is for the day. So also if you look into how to have toilets and litter systems, you don't know where to put it. The same with parking, because you're not sent into a special place. You go wherever, and then you stop when you see the Northern Lights. So yeah, it's quite a special situation. I don't think there are any other destinations in Norway that has the kind of same impact in such a large scale as we do here in the Tromsø region.
Yeah, I have seen that Northern Lights hunt in Tromsø, and that's really crazy sometimes. Yeah, and I think the discussion on these everyman's rights or freedom to roam will continue in one of the group sessions today. So there will be a small presentation of that. And that's
we have around 100 products just going on Northern Lights activities. Yeah. So you can imagine how many.
yeah, really wild area, I would say. Yeah, so I think there are many questions, but I'd like to pose in the chat, so you can maybe look at them later and answer to some of those. I'd like to pose one question about these social issues and this community, how community feels about tourism. So do you think that there should be some kind of there is this carbon footprint, but should there be also like social footprint or some social license to operate or something like that in the areas where tourism is really big? And the discussion before COVID was very much about this over tourism now it's not so over tourism, but what to do with that? And as you described in Tromsø, that people are annoyed because tourists come to their home area and disturb. What do you see how that should be kind of tackled? If Dieter is speaking.
I think it's a tricky question, really. I mean, the question is, what is a community in the first place? I mean, we usually kind of imagine them as very homogeneous and everybody thinks the same, and we know that's not really true. Because, I mean, people have different aspirations with their lives, they have different ideas about how a place should look like, and that with or without tourism. I mean, so I think it's very hard to talk about a community. And I mean, you know, I mean, if we talk about over-tourism, I mean, of course, some people kind of have complained about over-tourism, but at the same time, some people have earned money out of that and probably were particularly happy with it, you know, and wanted more. So it's always a question, I mean, who decides on these kind of things? And I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of a democratic question. I mean, how we organize our democratic lives and our civil society. And I think from that point of view, it's very much a political question. I mean, how this should be regulated. And of course, I mean, tourism is not at the center of political decision making. It's rather something that is very, very marginal. And from that point of view, I think we haven't had really a discussion on this. And I think maybe now, I mean, the time is much better to do such a discussion, because I think as we were already into, I mean, there is at least an awareness what a society without tourism looks like. Because that is what we had for the last 2 years, more or less, and or 1.5 years. And I think from that point of view, I think there is now a better ground actually to discuss the role of tourism with also politics and local stakeholders that wasn't there, 18 months ago.
Mm. Yeah, Inger-Lise and Lone, please.
Yeah, I agree with what you say. Because Tromsø, for instance, is not a very large city, but we do have a lot of offers. We have a lot of restaurants and nightlife, culture, shops, flights, international flights. And seeing now that we don't have guests, you also feel how important the tourism industry have been for the city. And people who were complaining before might not complain anymore, because you now realize that it was actually important for the destination to kind of be such a vibrant and live city as we are. And if they don't come back, we might lose a lot of things we used to have that we kind of took for granted. So I completely agree that we look at things in a different perspective in regard to that.
Yeah, good. So I think we have only a few minutes left. So if you have a brief message for the future tourism industry, what would you say? Matti, could you start?
I'm hoping that the future is a bright one, and I'm optimistic that we can make change happen and faster than we think. And I think this discussion has been really, really good one, and I think the companies and the municipalities and also the politics should just take responsibility for the big picture and do their part, and we can make change happen. That's how I feel.
Great to hear optimistic view. Thank you. And Dieter?
Yeah, I actually agree. I'm very optimistic as well. and I believe also in technology, and that will help us. And I sometimes wonder why we don't take those easy steps, you know. I mean, why not kind of having a policy or kind of an ambition to, you know, change all rental cars to electric cars? I mean, that would be, you know, kind of a big step forward. It would be totally achievable. It's not a big thing, actually. But it would really also promote the destination in a sensational way. This is the first destination that goes for rental cars totally electric. I mean, that would be, for me, kind of a great ambition and really something that that really be worthwhile kind of doing. And I think there are a lot of these kind of small steps that can be taken. And I think also, I mean, you know, as a tourism entrepreneur, I mean, I think, of course, you can have the ambition of changing the world. And I think that is great if you have that. But I think also small steps are valuable. And I think everybody could really try to contribute in that scope that is possible, considering the business situation and all these kind of things. And I think it's kind of everybody contributes in one or the other way. I think we are able to move forward in a positive way.
Great. What about Tromsø?
Yeah, unfortunately, we were kicked out, so we didn't get to hear your answers. But going forward, I think what we said before, cooperation will be really, really important, and also listening to and including the locals, and then also including the youths of the destination, because it's kind of their future we are creating. So that's important. And then also to the rental cars, it sounds really nice if we could have them all electric, but I feel really worried about all the guests coming up here, driving around in the region where we don't have any charging places in winter, getting stuck in all sorts of random places. So we would need some more infrastructure in order for that to happen. But also the working together with the destinations in the north on how to kind of keep the guests here and sending them around to each other and trying to make them stay for longer instead of trying to have just volume would be really, really important.
Okay, so I thank you all keynotes and this good discussion. I think this was really interesting for all of us. So I give the floor back to Mervi. Thank you.